It's easy to fall into the trap of just learning lots of nouns, but it's really verbs that make the difference between beginner level and intermediate level German. Without a verb, you don't have a sentence. And without a sentence, you've really just got a lot of unstructured vocab. So it makes sense to start upping your verb game. And I'm not really talking about all those verbs for our basic activities that you probably already know, like all of these. That are probably the 50 most common German verbs. No, today I've got somewhere around about 20 new verbs that are really handy if you're trying to make that jump from A2 level up to B1. And they all have something in common. Let's see if you can find out what it is. Grüß Gott, hallo, ich bin Billy Badger und das ist jetzt eindeutig Bausteine 3. Herzlich willkommen. So yes, 20 verbs, but there's a good chance I'll throw in a couple of extras, so I think we better get started. I'll try and put them into alphabetical order, starting with number 1, angewöhnen. Now, this looks like a past participle, doesn't it? With that GE, but it's not. It comes from the verb gewöhnen, which means to get used to. And we use it like this. Ich habe mich an den Lärm von den Nachbarn gewöhnt. I've gotten used to the noise the neighbors make. Or, wir wohnen an der Autobahn, aber ich habe mich daran gewöhnt. We live on the freeway, but I've gotten used to it. But the separable verb angewöhnen has a dative object. Ich habe es mir angewöhnt, jeden Tag ein bisschen Deutsch zu lernen. I've gotten into the habit of learning a bit of German every day. Or perhaps, du sollst es dir angewöhnen, jeden Tag 2 Liter Wasser zu trinken. You should get into the habit of drinking 2 liters of water every day. So it's a useful verb to talk about developing habits. And talking of which, let's move on to verb number 2, which is related. It's abgewöhnen. And you can probably work out what this one means. Here is an example. Ich muss es mir abgewöhnen, abends so viel Kaffee zu trinken. I have to break the habit of drinking so much coffee in the evening. Or it's often used with nominalized verbs. I'll show you what I mean. Ich muss mir das Fluchen abgewöhnen. I've got to break the habit of swearing so much. Or if you're a smoker, perhaps, ich muss mir das Rauchen abgewöhnen. I've got to break the habit of smoking. Not such a bad idea, I think. Let's move on to a similar verb, and this is, I think, now number 3, abraten. And we use this when giving advice. So you could say, for example, ich würde dir abraten, am Abend so viel Kaffee zu trinken. I'd advise against drinking so much coffee in the evenings. And you could use it with the preposition von. Maybe someone has told you about a used car that they're looking to buy, but it's old and expensive. Ich habe ihm davon abgeraten, so viel für das alte Auto auszugeben. I've advised him against spending so much on that old car. Well, our next verb, number 4, is begegnen. A verb that's used in a number of different ways, and it means to meet or to encounter. And you could say, ich bin ihm gestern am Strand begegnet. I met him yesterday on the beach. Now notice that it's conjugated with the auxiliary verb sein, like in this example too. Gestern ist sie ihrer alten Lehrerin im Supermarkt begegnet. Yesterday she met her old teacher in the supermarket, and it's an accidental meeting. But this is perhaps often a bit too formal for situations like this, so we could use another kind of compound dative verb. Gestern bin ich meiner alten Lehrerin im Supermarkt über den Weg gelaufen. This is like saying yesterday I ran into my old teacher in the supermarket. This is a phrase, I think, that is a lot more useful in these kinds of contexts. But going back to begegnen, it's more useful, I think, in abstract situations like in this example. Das ist ein Problem, dem man häufig begegnet. It's a problem you encounter frequently, or you often hear or perhaps read things like this. Der Regierung begegnet man mit wachsender Skepsis. The government is being met with growing skepticism. Now, moving on down the alphabet, we get to verb number 5, dienen. This is often used in the sense of to serve, which makes sense since the noun for a servant is der Diener. We could say, hat dem König treu gedient. He served the king faithfully. But again, this is a verb that's more useful in the abstract sense. Das neue Gesetz dient dem Schutz der Umwelt. The new law serves to protect the environment. This construction's very frequent in formal administrative German when explaining the purpose of laws, programs, or different measures that are being introduced. So if we're thinking about something that serves a purpose, then this is a good verb. And we often hear it used just like this. Das Geld dient einem guten Zweck. The money serves a good purpose. Well, time to move on to our next verb, Nummer 6, drohen, to threaten. So perhaps in a work context, we might hear, der Chef droht mir mit der Kündigung. The boss threatens me with dismissal. Or maybe a little bit more playfully, die Mutter drohte dem Kind mit dem Finger. The mother wagged her finger at the child. So it's often a threat of a physical nature, but we also use it in a more abstract sense. Das Gebäude droht einzustürzen. The building threatens to collapse, is in danger of collapsing, or die Verhandlungen drohen zu scheitern. The negotiations threaten to fail. Enough threats, let's move on to our next verb. And I think we're up to number 7, einbilden, to imagine. Now, in some ways, this verb is like another verb that you probably already know. Vorstellen. Stell dir vor, da wäre ein Einbrecher im Haus. Imagine there is a burglar in the house. Here, we're using our imagination to conjure up a situation that's not real but could be, is a kind of hypothetical. Einbilden, on the other hand, is where you're imagining things, deceiving yourself, and has more of a negative connotation. Ich habe mir eingebildet, ein Einbrecher wäre im Haus. There wasn't one, but I was convinced that it was true. So you might say, ich bin nicht böse auf dich, das bildest du dir nur ein. I'm not angry with you, you're just imagining it. Now that sounds like some gaslighting to me, so let's move on to our next verb, Nummer 8. And I like this one, entgegenkommen, which we can use in a physical sense and in a more abstract way as well. So if you're meeting someone, instead of getting them to come all the way to you or you going all the way to them, you might just meet up halfway to save them the trip. Ich komme dir entgegen. I'll come towards you. Maybe they're walking to your place and you offer to come towards them and pick them up in the car. So, ich fahre dir mit dem Auto entgegen und hol dich ab. I'll come to meet you in the car and pick you up. But then it's also used in negotiations too. Maybe you've been haggling over the price of something. Dann ist mir zum Schluss die Firma beim Preis entgegengekommen. And then finally, the company met me halfway on the price. So we're in negotiations and they've made some concessions and come down with the price to a price that I'm more happy to pay. Our next verb, Nummer 9, ist entsprechen, to correspond to. Now maybe this doesn't sound too useful at all, but let's see if we can come up with some handy examples. Das Ergebnis entspricht nicht meinen Erwartungen. The result doesn't match my expectations. And actually, this could be another equivalent of the verb to meet, couldn't it? The result doesn't meet our expectations. And so you might hear examples like this. Die Qualität entspricht dem Preis. The quality matches the price. And a final example, perhaps, dieses Video entspricht dem B1-Niveau. This video corresponds to the B1 level, but we're more likely, I think, to say this video is at the B1 level. Moving on, our next verb, this is number 10, I think, ist erscheinen. It can mean to appear in both a physical and again in a more abstract sense. We could say, ist nicht zur Arbeit erschienen. He didn't appear for work. Maybe, though, you're proofreading a book or a manuscript and find a mistake. So you say, der Fehler erscheint auf Seite 42. The error appears on page 42. But it's also used in a physical sense. Wir haben sehr lange auf sie gewartet und dann ist sie doch plötzlich erschienen. We waited for her for ages and then she suddenly appeared. And if you want a less formal way to say the same thing, then try auftauchen. Wir haben ewig lang auf sie gewartet. Wir wollten aufgeben und dann ist sie doch aufgetaucht. Or even aufgekreuzt would be another good one. So lots of possibilities here. We also use erscheinen, a little bit like that other verb scheinen, where we say scheint sehr müde zu sein. He seems to be very tired. It's a subjective assessment of how he appears or how he seems to you. But we can also use erscheinen where we don't need the infinitive clause at all. Erscheint mir sehr müde. He appears very tired to me. And this is more, I think, of a formal usage and also a little bit more of an objective assessment of his appearance. Our next verb, Nummer 11, is gelingen, and this is a great verb. It means to succeed. And when we're talking about people's success with certain things, we use it like this. Maybe you are out hiking in the late evening and you might say, es ist uns nicht gelungen, vor dem Sonnenuntergang den Gipfel zu erreichen. We didn't succeed in getting to the summit before sunset. Or, ich wollte mein Motorrad selber reparieren, aber es ist mir nicht gelungen. I wanted to fix my motorbike myself, but I didn't succeed or didn't manage it. Nummer 12. Genügen is another great verb. In English, this would mean to be enough, or if we're being really fancy, to suffice. Here's how we use it. Ein kurzer Anruf würde mir genügen. A short phone call would be enough for me. In this sense, it's a little bit like that other verb reichen, isn't it? Which is slightly less formal. Ein kurzer Anruf reicht. A short phone call is enough. Or mir reicht's, a common phrase to express that you've had enough. We can also use a separable form of this verb, ausreichen, to express that something is sufficient. Für ein Wochenende in der Stadt reichen 200 Euro völlig aus. For one weekend in the city, 200 euros are more than enough or sufficient. Aber jetzt reicht's. Machen wir doch weiter. Let's move on. Hinterherlaufen. This is number 13. Wir haben einen neuen Hund, der uns ständig hinterherläuft. We've got a new dog and it runs after us wherever we go. Or in an abstract sense, we could say, sie läuft ihrem Traum hinterher. She's chasing her dream, we might say perhaps. Verb number 14, nachlaufen, is another verb with a similar meaning, if not sometimes maybe a little bit critical or negative. Ist nicht sehr nett, aber sie läuft ihm trotzdem ständig nach. He's not very nice to her, but she still runs after him the whole time. But we can also use it in a more literal sense. Ich bin ihm nachgelaufen, ihm noch was zu sagen. I ran after him to tell him something else. And this has got the sense of catching up with him, to say something to him. All right, we're still in the ends in our alphabetical look at the best B1 verbs. Make sure you check out this week's guide. You'll find a link in the description. And while you're down there, don't forget to hit the like button and maybe think about subscribing if you're finding these videos useful, because that is our next verb, number 15, nützen. To be of use or to be of benefit. Here we've got examples like this. Was nützt mir das? What's the use of that to me? Der Sprachkurs hat mir sehr genützt. The language course helped me a lot, was a lot of use to me. So we're talking about the benefit of learning the language. Aber obwohl die Wiederholung uns sehr nützt, schadet es uns auch nicht, weiterzumachen. And that's our next verb, schaden, to damage or to harm. I think it's verb number 16. This is a verb you might read with respect to smoking. Rauchen schadet der Gesundheit. Smoking damages or harms your health. And as you can see, it's used with the dative der Gesundheit or der Skandal hat seinem Ruf geschadet. Now, I'm not sure what the scandal was, but it certainly damaged his reputation. Then we come to verb number 17, trauen, to trust in a fairly general sense. Ich trau ihm nicht. I don't trust him. It's often used with an addition like this. Ich trau ihm nicht über den Weg. I don't trust him at all. And then, in a more abstract sense, we might say, ich traue meinen Augen nicht. I don't trust my eyes, but I think we'd probably be actually more likely to say, I can't believe my eyes. But don't mix this up with the reflexive form of the verb, which is used with the accusative. Ich wollte mit ihr reden, aber ich habe mich nicht getraut. I wanted to talk to her, but I was too chicken. I didn't dare. So a completely different meaning. And then before we move on, you might know the verb vertrauen, which we use when expressing a more complete, perhaps intense trust, maybe a bit like a faith in someone or something. Maybe if you're climbing with a rope and your partner's hanging on to the other end, you might say, ich vertraue dir total, halte mich fest. I trust you completely, hold me tight. Oh, and while we're at it, let's look at two more versions of the verb that are worth knowing. First up is anvertrauen. This means to entrust something to someone, like perhaps if you're leaving your kids with a good friend. Du vertraust dem Freund die Kinder an. Or maybe it's your car. Hat mir sein Auto anvertraut. He entrusted his car to me. And finally, zutrauen, which we use when we think that someone is capable of doing something. Ich traue es ihr zu, dass sie es schafft. You really think that she'll be able to do something, so you wouldn't be surprised if she managed to do it. Or perhaps, das hätte ich ihm nie zugetraut. I never thought he could do it. Aber ich traue es euch zu, dass ihr alles verstanden habt. Ich hoffe, dass das Video euren Erwartungen entsprochen hat und dass ihr euch traut, unten in die Kommentare zu schreiben, welches Verb euch am besten gefällt. Es schadet nicht, wenn ihr nur kurz schreibt. Ein kurzer Kommentar genügt. So, thanks for watching. And again, don't forget to check out the guide to these verbs in the description below. Also danke fürs Zuschauen. Bis bald und tschüss.